Eagles, Falcons, and the NFL with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, today's pigskin.com, although I don't think it's called today's pigskin anymore. I just got an email the other day from FanRag Sports, which is where John covers the league nationally. Am I correct about that, John McMullen?
Correct. They're in the midst of rebranding, so it's going to be FRS NFL. So basically everything on one site because people can't remember 8 different sites for baseball, basketball, football.
Yes, I was contributing to the basketball site. Keyword there was contributing to the basketball site for FanRag Sports. But John, on the football side, he, of course, covers the league nationally. We'll get into some national stuff. In just a bit here. I want to start off with the Eagles, Doug Peterson today. Aaron Grymes going to get elevated, it looks like. No Paul Turner for the Paul Turner fans out there, the PT fans. Aaron Grymes. And I guess that's an indication that they're still a little concerned about Leotis Mckelvin. And then the other day, Schwartz kind of threw in there that Nolan Carroll was having a problem. He did not show up on the injury report, but Grymes being activated kind of clearly shows they're concerned about their secondary.
Yeah, and special teams as well, because remember, Terrence Brooks is going to miss this game. Camus Grugier-Hill is probably going to miss his 3rd straight game, and those are our 2 key special teams contributors. So it makes a lot of sense because you have the injury problems at corner. Carroll and Mckelvin both dealing with hamstrings. And you have the problems on special teams. So for 1 week, this move makes a lot of sense. And anytime you're talking about the back part of your roster and your practice squad, you can move pieces around from week to week if you need guys. But I think when you consider Atlanta and what they bring to the table and the number 1 passing offense and all that, it certainly makes far more sense to have an extra corner this week with all the injuries than a wide receiver.
Yeah, and if Leotis Mckelvin can't go, I guess the top guy up becomes Mill. How are they kind of running that 3rd corner? I mean, it's Carroll and Mckelvin when they're healthy, but how is that defensive backfield rotation looking right now halfway through the year?
Well, I think people forget, out of sight, out of mind. That Ron Brooks injury was bigger than people surmise, not us, but people have kind of forgotten him already. And he was a key part of this team as the slot corner. And now they've had to mix and match, and it goes from week to week. Sometimes Jim Schwartz likes the physicality Malcolm Jenkins brings to the slot. That was the case against the Giants. And then Jalen Watkins will enter in at safety. Other times, if Mckelvin is healthy, they're going to put Mills out there and have the 3 traditional corners. So it all depends on the week and the matchups. But it's pretty evident right now because of the fact that McKelvin's not 100%. I think the theory is you're going to have Malcolm play the nickel corner, have Watkins come in when he slides down, and they'll mix and match from there. If Leotis is capable of playing, they want to limit his reps, and at times he's going to be replaced by Jalen Mills.
John, who is Aaron Grymes? Can you tell us a little bit about his backstory?
Yeah, he was making a real run at making this team in the preseason. And if people can remember all the way back to the Pittsburgh game, he made that great interception in the end zone and hurt his shoulder on the very same play. So sort of the highs and lows on one particular play. He almost stamped his spot on the roster, but he hurt himself. He wasn't healthy to take it. So the Eagles released him with an injury settlement. When he got healthy, they brought him back to the practice squad when Ron Brooks got hurt. And he's an undersized guy. He's a slot corner. What stood out about him to me in the preseason was the way he competed every day. He's a small guy, but he sticks his head in the trash, and he's not afraid. And he's a very productive player in the CFL. He was an all CFL level player. So he's got some skill. And as I said, if he didn't have that shoulder injury, there was a very, very good chance he was going to make this team at the start of the season.
Yeah, so I think Doug was asked about that, right? If he didn't get hurt, and Doug had some humorous answers as he tried to remember back that far.
Yeah, he couldn't remember back that far. Most people can't, but he was playing really, really well. And you never say with a guy with some physical limitations. It's very similar. In fact, he was sort of like the defensive Paul Turner. And that's a good example because Paul had such a great preseason, but there's limitations to him physically. And you have to weigh that also. And that was some of the hurdles Aaron was facing. I don't think there's any question he would have made the practice squad. The only question would have been, did he get one of those last 2 or 3 spots on the regular season roster?
Mike and I talked about Leotis Mckelvin and the way the season's going to go. Are you in that camp, too, that the hamstring's going to be an issue the rest of the way? I mean, we're going to be talking about this week in and week out.
Yeah, it seems that way. It's just – and we talked about it when it first happened. It's just one of those injuries at that position for that type of player. It's a concern because it can linger a very, very long time. And Doug talked about it earlier in the week. Maybe you can get away with it at different positions. If you're inside, if you're an offensive lineman, defensive tackle, and you're not going full bore, you can get by with a sore hamstring. But when you're a cornerback or a wide receiver, it's just you're always going full out. You're always running full speed, cutting, and it's just a difficult injury for those guys. Leotis himself has called it a fast guy injury, and it's tough for a fast guy to be fast if his legs aren't 100%.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, Eagles, Falcons, NFL. Fletcher Cox, is he a guy that is – because I thought today, John, the answer Peterson gave about how much they've missed Logan was kind of downplaying what he means to the team. He was like, well, you just miss him from a numbers standpoint. He's an extra body. It was like, whoa, just an extra body. I mean, I get his premise, but Fletcher Cox is a guy that's probably very ecstatic that Logan's coming back.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I don't think Doug meant it like that. And it's just I think they've struggled with numbers at that position, just from their philosophical standpoint since Benny went down. I think he realizes he's a big impact on the defense. Just his ability more so because Bo has held up pretty well against the run, so. I think the Eagles were pleasantly surprised on how well Bo Allen played, but there's no push on the pass rush in the interior without Benny Logan in there, and that's very, very important, obviously, for a team that wants to get home with just 4 rushers in a best-case scenario. If you're not getting an interior push, we've seen the consistency of Brandon Graham all this year. You're getting that edge rush. But, hey, I got news for you. If that edge rush is free and the quarterback can step up in the pocket, that's what he's going to do, especially an astute one like Matt Ryan. It's not going to affect him all that much. But if you try to step up and all of a sudden that interior pressure is pushing the pocket right into you, well, then you have nowhere to go, and that's what the Eagles want to create. So Benny Logan is very, very important to what they do defensively.
John McMullen, let's go 5 on the Falcons. Give us your keys about this Falcons team. They're 6-3. They lead the league in scoring. This is a team that got off to a hot start last year. Some people are having some trouble believing in them. Your 5 on the Falcons is up right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. Give us some of the nuggets you found out about this team.
Well, they're so good offensively. And most people understand the passing game because of Ryan and Julio Jones, but it's far more than that. They run the football well with Devontae Freeman. Tevin Coleman's not going to be there again. They had some hope earlier in the week that he might be able to come back from his own hamstring injury. That's not going to happen. But Freeman's the kind of guy who can handle the football 25 times anyway. So while it hurts you a little bit, you still have to worry about the running game. They're just so well-rounded offensively. And getting Mohamed Sanu, although the numbers are not eye-popping for him, the fact that you have a complement, and I'm not going to call him as good as Roddy White was in his prime, but the fact that you have a really good complement to Julio Jones. 3 times this year, teams have sold out to stop Julio Jones, and he's had less than 30 yards receiving. And the Falcons have won all 3 games. That tells you how well balanced they are offensively. And I think people don't realize that. And then defensively, as I always say, their head coach is from Seattle, so they're trying to implement that type of system, and they're getting closer to doing so. They're not there yet. Big injury, though, this week is Marcus Trufant's not going to be able to go. And he's not only their best corner, he's one of the best corners in football. Jordan Matthews talked about it earlier this week. So that's their injury that you have to keep an eye on because they don't have a lot of depth at the cornerback position.
John, I think I also saw that as far as their pass rush goes, Dwight Freeney might not go for them or is out for them. But and the Eagles, Fletcher Cox, Benny Logan, the Eagles' defensive line gets all the attention, but the Falcons have some weapons on their pass rush as well, correct?
Yeah, Vic Beasley has really had a sort of a coming out party. Everyone knew he had the talent. I think he was the 8th overall pick in the draft. So all of a sudden, they have a big-time edge rusher. He's got 7.5 sacks already. And that's something they've struggled with for years, not just last year, but for 3 or 4 years. They've had a really, really difficult time getting to the opposing quarterback. And now they're 8th in the league in sacks. So while it's not great, it's not phenomenal, they're in the top half of the league, and that's been an impact of their team that's made it a lot easier for that top-ranked offense. And the fact that if they do have a 3-and-out occasionally, it's not going to kill them because the Falcons have improved dramatically on defense.
Yeah, and John, one thing is, talking with Casey Jr. the other day when he's breaking down some of the film, and he looks at this defense from the Atlanta Falcons and says, well, one area that they can be had, they don't cover the tight end very well, and I thought Frank Reich made a point this week to say they do want to get Zach Ertz more involved. So this is a week where I kind of compared, not that Wentz is Brady and that the Eagles are the Patriots, but to have that philosophy where each week it's a different guy that nails you. Yeah, Gronk's the star, and the Eagles don't have a Gronk, but one week it's Gronk, the next week it's Bennett, then it's Hogan, then it's Blunt. They just change every week so that you never know which way they're coming at you.
Well, I agree with your theory on the Patriots, but I would go, the Eagles don't have Gronk, they don't have Bennett, they don't have Edelman, they don't have Hogan. So that's the problem. The Patriots have some really good players, and, yeah, they can all jump up on a particular week and bite you. I know we all want Zach Ertz to be that, and maybe he will be that, but until we see it, we've talked about the receivers a lot, and, you got it a lot easier this week because Trufant's one of those guys that you could say if you wanted to, and you probably don't want to against the Eagles because you don't have to, but if you wanted to take out a particular receiver, you could tell Trufant, point him out, and say, just take that guy out, and he's the kind of player that can do it, but he's not going to be there. So I think that is something that trends really, really well in the Eagles' direction. But offensively, we just got to be honest about it, and the Eagles don't have a ton of playmakers. So while I agree that the Falcons at times have struggled with tight ends, they also have athletic people that are going to get there. They have a good rookie safety, a good rookie linebacker to have the athleticism to do that. I think as they learn, they're going to get a lot better. So it's not a physical problem with the Falcons. It's just guys who don't have a ton of experience.
All right, John, you have your 5 on the Falcons, plus your pick for Eagles-Falcons. Let's get your pick for the game, then we'll get a couple quick NFL thoughts from you here. What do you have for Sunday, Eagles-Falcons?
I think the Eagles are going to win the game. I think playing at home, obviously, the Eagles have been lights out at home. I think that means the world to them. And Doug talked about that a little bit today. It's a very difficult team. I understand it, but we've seen the Eagles beat difficult teams at home. We've seen them beat Minnesota, Pittsburgh. And I think the Trufant injury kind of tips things in the other direction. I have the Eagles winning a very, very close game, 24-23, with Pete Thompson's favorite player being the difference in Caleb's
Yeah. Go for the kicker.
All right, John, a couple quick NFL thoughts you wrote about at fanranksports.com, where he covers the NFL. One, Randy Gregory. We kind of opened up today's show with, setting a lighthearted mood today, but as you write, a cautionary tale for those who want to push marijuana into the NFL.
Yeah, because, I think a lot of people are uneducated on the NFL substance abuse policy and think it's sort of draconian. And it's really, really difficult to fail that policy for marijuana. It's really, really lenient. And the fact that you can fail multiple tests and not be suspended, it starts off with a fine. You're only suspended for multiple violations. So when you talk about Randy Gregory, who in one season has been suspended for 4 games, 10 games, now this will be a year, that's a guy with a problem. That's a guy with an addiction problem. And if you're failing that many tests, I think at some point you got to give up the ideology and say, this policy is only catching guys who have significant problems and probably need help. And for that reason, I don't think it's that bad of a thing, because I don't know why you wouldn't want to help people who have an issue like that.
Yeah, as you wrote that earlier, that the marijuana legalization in California, which just got passed on Election Day, little effect on the NFL. And I guess, was because Colorado already has it, and I guess they took kind of a model.
Arizona shot it down.
Yeah.
Arizona, it was up for bid.
Massachusetts, it passed, right? Yep. A couple of places it did.
Yeah,
but
it passed in California, Nevada, and Massachusetts. It was already legal in Colorado and Washington. So there's now 7 different teams. But again, I think it's a lack of education. People don't understand just because it's legal in those particular states does not mean your employer can't test for it. And it's still collectively bargained in the NFL that you have to go through this process. So it doesn't matter if you're on the Seahawks, any of the California teams, the Denver Broncos. If you're caught like Randy Gregory, you're still going to be suspended. And that's one of those things that, I think people are uneducated on the policy. It's not like people on the Denver Broncos can smoke and people on the Philadelphia Eagles can't.
Right.
And I think a lot of people think that's the way it is.
All right, John. By the way, are you surprised that the NFL even made a statement or anything about the ratings?
Well, for a little, it wasn't a statement. Roger was at a conference.
I mean, that they even acknowledged it.
A little bit. He acknowledged it before. I get a kick out of, though, the fact that he was so, as I wrote today, he basically nailed down the problem in his mind, and the fact that the game's got to be sped up. And I'm thinking to myself, this has been going on for 2 months. Nobody expected it. We've talked about it on this show a lot of times. There's a ton of different reasons that have contributed to this, and it's different for everybody. But the NFL is acting like, well, the game is 6 minutes longer than it used to be, and if we cut that out, we're going to be fine.
That's awesome.
I just think it was kind of comical that's what he hung the league's hat on as the problem.
All right, John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com for this week's Eagles and Falcons at JF McMullen. He'll be there at the link on Sunday and back on Monday with a full recap of Eagles-Giants. Make sure right after the game you check out McMullen's Quick Hits at 97.3 ESPN.com. Thanks, John.
Hey, thanks, guys.